Hello, I'm Harvey Bird of Bird Brothers Carpets. We have a special on carpet cleaning. Until the end of February, you can save 20% off the cost of wall-to-wall cleaning. This is a chance to get a first-class job at a very special price. The work is done by our own crews, and they do an excellent job. So for 20% saving on wall-to-wall cleaning, give us a call. We're Bird Brothers, Main and 20th.
BCTV, our best show.
Okay, Bill, look, I'm back on the air now, Bill. I'm talking to Bill Dom, Tory MP, the man who's fighting metrication. But we'll try and catch you tomorrow morning on this latest nonsense in Toronto, okay? Okay, right. Thanks, Willie. Bye. I was just so flabbergasted, good morning, by the arrest of the charges against this gasoline station operator in Toronto this morning, including the hint that if this guy, who's been 32 years in this country as an American, is deportable if convicted, it's unbelievable when you think of the number of really illegal aliens in this country, that somebody's threatening to deport a man who insists on selling gasoline by the gallon. And yesterday they sealed his pumps and he cut the pumps open again. That was Bill Dom, to whom I was speaking at the moment, but we'll follow that later. I was trying to check with Bill Dom that there is in fact no statute law in this country enforcing metrication, the metric system. There is only an order in council. That's beside the point. The object of the exercise this morning on the Webster program is to give you some information and some personality coverage of something which used to be called Transpo, and then it became Expo 86, and a fella called Harcourt tried to stop it, and now he's all in favour of it. And all we've got in the way of Expo at the moment, I think the tent is still up down at BC Place. That's not what Expo 86 will be when it opens in May, because with me this morning is Michael Bartlett, who apparently is going to be the top honcho about whom there has been not swirling any major controversy, but considerable interest has been raised in his background and the fact that he's an American who's an expert in theme parks. So we'll talk to thee, Bartlett, very shortly. Now, also on the cards this morning is an anniversary. It's 1 year ago today since the old King Neptune Restaurant on the Westminster waterfront served its final meal. And you'll all remember the fuss that if they didn't get off the property quickly, the BCDC in New Westminster was going to lose $150,000 a week. The restaurant was moved by barge from the Westminster waterfront to a mud swamp on the Fraser River, where it's now lying sliced in two. That's the King Neptune Restaurant, still looking for a place to go. And just out of sheer maudlin sentimentality, we've got Denis Almas of the King Neptune here this morning to bring us up to date on the future of his once hallowed eating place. But first this morning it's Michael Bartlett, Expo 86. Don't quite know what his position is, but we'll find out after the break. I think I'm entitled to say that there is still considerable confusion in the minds of the public about Expo 86, formerly Transpo 86. It's all involved, it would seem, with BC Place, the federal government, the provincial government, and at last, willingly, the city of Vancouver. Now, Michael Bartlett, precisely what is your function at the moment? It's very difficult to get it clear.
Well, my function, I'm the general manager for Expo 86, and I'm responsible for getting the fair built, getting it open, and hopefully successful.
Now, you won't take this offensively as an offense, as a, offensive, I know. But you seem to be a kind of Johnny-come-lately who's come in quick and, all of a sudden a number of people have left Expo 86. Is there any connection between the events?
Oh, I think there's a certain connection, but I wouldn't necessarily call me a Johnny-come-lately. I think over the last year and a half, Expo really was, the management was trying to make sure it was a going entity. At this time, we're trying to get the development going, and you bring in someone who has experience like myself to do that part of the job. That's what I expect to do.
Now, your experience is in running theme parks, fun parks, and I'll say the word Disneyland and you'll cringe.
Well, I don't know if I will cringe, but yes, that's my experience.
Now, so it's going to be a fun fair, Expo 86?
No, I don't think that at all. I think that what I would attempt to do is to apply the skills that I learned in theme parks. And I think the mechanics are very similar that are required to run an exposition. So I would expect to apply those mechanics to make this the highest quality exposition that we could possibly make it.
Okay, Expo 86. My impression, and you can disabuse me forthwith, was that this was going to be a specialist exhibition of the transportation of the future, hence the ALRT. Am I right?
That's correct. We're a special category exposition as opposed to a universal exposition. And our mandate is to demonstrate transportation and the related communications to transportation. All the leading edge technology that goes with that, and the future consumer goods that we would expect to see one of these days.
So it's more of a commercial exposition than a theme park?
Well, it certainly is. All fairs, all the world fairs, really aren't theme parks at all. They're not intended to be fun parks. They're intended to be very serious, to educate the people about the theme that that has been approved by the BIE.
Now, is this a first-class World's Fair or a second-class World's Fair?
I can assure you and the people of British Columbia it will be absolutely a first-class World's Fair.
But you know what I mean. Has it got the same status and approval of, say, the New York or the Montreal Centennial Exposition, or is it like the Seattle World's Fair in status?
In terms of the status, the official status, it's more like Seattle.
Right.
In terms of what we're trying to produce, it'll be much more like the Montreal or the New York World's Fair.
Now, we all remember what Drapeau said, the never-to-be-forgotten words of Mayor Drapeau, that it was as impossible for the Montreal Exposition to have a deficit as for a man to have a baby. And we know that he fulfilled the wrong side of that. I presume, said he, cynically, of course, as one must be, that we're headed for a massive deficit on Expo 86.
Absolutely not. That's one of the reasons I'm here. I'm convinced that we'll break this fair even, and that really the people of British Columbia and Canada will get a wonderful exposition and it won't cost them a dime.
Have we got a site?
We do have a site.
How big a site?
131 acres.
That's part of BC Place.
That parts of it are ultimately parts of BC Place. Some are now. There's quite a separation between BC Place and ourselves.
Are the plans firmed up for what's going to be on the site?
They're not firmed up right now. We're working on the product, and we would expect that by this spring we would be able to unveil all of our plans to the public.
Is every major nation in the world going to have an what do you call these things? An exhibit here?
Yes, the pavilions.
Pavilion, yeah.
That's right. No, I think that not every major country in the world, but certainly a very, very representative group. We've already got 14 countries with a letter of intent to participate, headed by the United States and Great Britain, and we would expand France, and we would expect that to grow to 30 countries. Now, if you compare that to the most recent World's Fair, which would be Knoxville, they only had 22 countries when they completed their fair. So we're doing quite well.
Knoxville, I believe, turned out to be a bit of a disappointment for the organizers of it.
I don't necessarily think it was a disappointment for the organizers. I think it might have been a critical failure with the public, in that I don't believe it delivered on its theme, and I think it was the product was disappointing. But that broke even. So they did 11 million people, which was their plan, and they broke even on the bottom line, and the city ended up with about $250 million worth of federally spent money on roads. Mm-hmm. So they felt pretty good about it.
Now tell me some of the problems you have in your own particular position. I understand that you are not yet a Canadian citizen. I'm not knocking you, but how long have you been in the country?
I've been here 5 years. I've been a landed immigrant for 5 years.
Oh, yeah. So you're legal and a landed immigrant. And is it a fact that you must take out Canadian citizenship before you can be properly appointed to be the Chief Executive Officer of Expo 86?
It's not an absolute requirement, but I think everybody, of course, would like to see that happen.
And do you plan to do such?
I absolutely do. It's a, you know, it's not a business decision. It's an emotional decision. My career has been made in Canada, and I would expect to be a Canadian citizen within the first part of this year.
And you're only 40 years of age now, is that correct?
Yes, only 40.
They tell me, however, that there have been considerable ripples. And I see you've got a new, in these times of restraint, it seems kind of odd. How many vice presidents are you going to have?
We have 7 vice presidents right now, and that would be it.
Salaries ranging from?
From $40,000 a year to $85,000 a year.
And a former SOCRED assistant working at $75,000 a year?
If you're speaking about Mr. Ketchum, that's not true at all.
It's not 75?
No.
55?
I'm not going to answer on the specific people, but I'll tell you that the range is from 40 to 85.
7 vice presidents, including Ketchum, from between 40 to 85.
That's correct.
And I can't possibly ask you what your arrangement is in money.
Absolutely not. You'd have to ask my chairman of the board.
That's Jimmy Patterson.
Yes, that's right.
Oh, I can ask Jimmy. But you're actually not yet appointed to the job.
That's right. That's still, our board of directors still has to take that action.
I see. You're working, being paid as a consultant through a big accounting firm.
That's right. Through
Touche Ross.
Touche Ross.
You see, we've got to get all these things out and cleared away so we can talk about, because I suppose there's a little bit of pride involved in that. They think, my, they've got to go and get an American expert to run the Canadian Expo 86. That's a compliment to you, isn't it?
Well, I don't know if it certainly is a compliment that I'm the expert they picked. Sure, I enjoy that, and that's why I'm here.
More with Mike Bartlett. Proper title at the moment again?
General manager.
General manager of Expo 86, which is going to open on May the 2nd, 1986. Is going to make money.
Break even.
Subject to the economy.
Well, you know, when the economy is bad, things like expositions have a habit of doing quite well.
And how much money are we, I presume it's a Crown Corporation Expo 86?
Yes, it is.
You're separate from BC Place?
Yes, we are. We're 2 Crown corporations.
2 Crown corporations. And the expenditure of capital will come, roughly speaking, to how much?
I really can't comment on that right now until our plans are finished and our cost estimates are in. Whatever I'd say right now would be wrong.
Would be wrong, yeah.
Yes.
But to build a good big theme park, such as the one you ran in Toronto, what was it called?
Canada's Wonderland.
Would cost how much?
Well, when we completed Canada's Wonderland, it was $123 million.
And that was pre-inflation, wasn't it?
Well, inflation was pretty high at that time.
But not as high as it later became.
That's
More
true.
with Michael Bartlett, General Manager of Expo 86. Real people in Expo 86, and your questions too, after the break. Michael Bartlett is the General Manager of Expo 86, and he adamantly resists any suggestion that there's going to be a plastic exposition.
I certainly do. I resent the...
You resent that?
At all, yes.
Yeah. Well, that's why I wanted to ask you a little bit more about your own background. Could we see that clip on, what do you call this place?
Canada's Wonderland.
Canada's Wonderland, which will be coming up here on the monitor in just 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds. There it is. Tell me about it.
Well, Canada's Wonderland was a theme park built on 370 acres. You're seeing a shot of a 300-foot by 80-foot fountain with a 160-foot mountain in the back, roughly 2 acres at the base. There's a waterfall that you see on the mountain that's 60 feet high.
What was the biggest draw? What is the biggest draw at Canada's Wonderland?
Well, I would say the major shows were the biggest draw, a musical variety shows with all the popular songs. 16 kids performing, backed up by musicians and technicians. Nice house, and of course all the roller coasters. And
will you be using BC Stadium for your biggest presentations at Expo?
We do have an agreement that we in fact can use the stadium. for special events, and in some cases the national days, which are quite large, or opening ceremonies. So
That's right.
It will work together with
So
Expo.
you're guaranteed good weather for your opening ceremonies in any case, because you've got the biggest, one of the biggest covered stadiums in the world, right?
Well, that's right. Tremendous asset.
Now, this would mean too that apart from the technology we're going to see, that you're going to bring in a lot of Hollywood glitter, eh?
Hollywood glitter. Well, we're certainly going to be entertaining.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, matter of fact,
Hollywood
I'd like
stars I'm talking about.
Of course. You're going to see a combination of technology, educational activities, and entertainment. And that entertainment will range from self-produced shows to craft festivals to stars. Of course.
I mean, one thing I don't want to do is walk around and look at little computers and whatnot. I want to see shows.
Well, I assure you we'll entertain you.
So I'm one of the common people, and it's the common people that support these things, is it? Not the technicians.
Well, in order to look at the technical side and the educational features, you've got to have the entertainment value in place. That's what really brings the people to the fair, and then we'll give them the educational side.
And referring to my researcher in Vancouver Sound, a woman by the name of Nichols, she says the brass at Expo have been chatting with Bob Janney, a noted Disney consultant and the man who staged Ronald Reagan's inauguration parade. Are you going to use him for your kind of pre-opening extravaganza with Her Majesty the Queen?
He would be a contributing force to that, yes. He's an extremely creative person, and he would aid our producer, Chris Wooten, who's our...
Oh, he's a local guy.
Sure, he's local, and
Yeah,
but we're
quite
trying to
right, too.
get the best help we possibly can.
I don't blame you. You're not having any money problems at the moment to
Well, not at the
budget
moment.
forward.
No, we're putting the budget together, but we're not spending enough money right now that it'll be a problem later.
Right. It will. I suppose it's just revenue producing to try and cover your costs as best you can.
Yeah, I think it's a unique project. It's like an urban renewal project. When you produce enough revenues to offset your expenses, then the residual value accrues to the city. Or to the
Too
province.
early to ask you what the admission fee might be for Expo 86. It is, isn't it?
It is a little too early.
I mean, if inflation keeps going up, it might be 25 bucks, and if it goes down, it might be 25 cents.
Well, you never can tell, so we'll try to make it as reasonable as we can.
Now, are you deliberately taking advantage of Her Majesty's visit to give you a kind of good send-off? Or are you doing that for the province, the Queen's visit?
No, really, there's some selfish interest there. Expo is now alive and kicking, and this spring we're going to tell people all about our plans. And I think we see the Queen's visit as a way of attracting attention to ourselves and making sure that everybody knows about Expo 86.
I thought it was just going to be tea for 30,000 children with the Queen pouring. That's not the basic plan, is it?
Well, it's 30,000 children, but I don't know about the tea. The program might be a little bit more elaborate than that.
Well, it'll give us a little bit of fun. Okay, if you have any questions about Expo 86, because they're not really in any trouble yet. There's been a few chemistry problems among the staff, I see. Nod your head?
Well, I think when you talk about chemistry problems, you're referring to a few people that have left us.
Yes.
And, you know, we're committed to doing a first-class World's Fair.
And you've got to have a free hand to do it.
That's right. And sometimes, you know, there are some people that won't stay with it.
And as soon as you get your Canadian citizenship, you'll be officially appointed as Chief Executive Officer.
Whichever comes first.
Whichever comes first. Okay, questions, if you care now, to Michael Bartlett. I don't know if we'll even raise a question, because it's only 1980. What year is this?
1983.
3.
We got 3 years to go, 4 years.
And you have a
3
lot of
years to
major construction yet to do, have you
go.
not?
Yes, we do. It's quite a tight time.
Will all the pavilions be permanent pavilions? Not necessarily, no.
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, most of it is temporary as a result of the BIE, which approves...
The BIE, what's the BIE?
The Bureau of International Expositions. And by the very nature of a World Fair, the facilities have to come down after the fair is over. Now, you can leave a certain amount of facilities, but that has to be agreed upon by ourselves, the city, and BC Place.
Yeah, there was very little left at the Montreal Exposition, except Man and His World or something.
Yeah, well, that's right, and really we don't have much choice.
And your legacy, the legacy of this will be the ALRT, which actually goes through the fair, does it not?
It goes through the site, but there'll be other legacies. You know, we will clean up that entire area there and then turn it over to BC Place so that they can develop commercial buildings.
Very helpful, Michael. We'll try for a few phone calls if anybody's interested after this break. Lots of calls now, but they're probably all wanting to get a job. Go ahead to Mike Bartlett.
Good morning.
Morning.
Mike and Jack, here's 4 questions for you. Hopefully you can answer them for me, Mr. Bartlett. How many jobs will be created during the fair, and where does the LRT fit into the fair?
Yeah.
And what types of transit items will be included in this fair?
Okay.
And how long will the fair run?
Okay, good. All good questions, which I omitted to ask. How many jobs will be created?
Well, in I think construction jobs, you're looking at 1,500 to 2,000 construction jobs when we get up. If you look at the operation itself, I would say you're looking we have to do the schedules before we know for sure, but I'd say you're looking at 8,000 to 10,000 seasonal jobs in 1986.
Good. How does the ALRT fit in?
Well, the ALRT actually goes through the site, and there are 2 stations. One would be the stadium station, another would be the station that is right at Main Street. So in order to get to Expo 86, you would get off at one of those 2 stations.
How long will it run?
We'll run from May 2nd, 1986 through October 13th.
1986.
That's right.
Good. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning.
Morning.
Yes, Mr. Bartlett, this job-intensive program, I guess it should be quite job-intensive, the construction of the whole project, should it? I think the 8,000 to 10,000 was mentioned during the fair, wasn't it?
They're seasonal workers.
That's correct.
Yeah, and it should be quite job-intensive during the construction of it?
Yes, it would.
Yeah, when do you expect to have the construction underway?
Well, we'd like to see a start this late spring of this year.
You'll be starting to grade the areas and so forth, eh?
That's right. For the first year, what we're looking at is really not above-ground construction, but we are looking to wrap up the land and do the site development.
Well, best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Go ahead to Mike Bartlett of Expo 86.
Hi, I've heard rumors that the space shuttle will be coming to Vancouver. Is that true or not?
Well, I can't confirm that at this point. We'd sure love it to, but there's no commitment now.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Bartlett.
Yes.
Will there be any museum-quality exhibits focusing on Indian art, either in a contemporary vein or a prehistoric vein that you are planning on?
We won't rule any of that out, and there are certainly some interest from the museum people. Those negotiations or what's going to happen in that vein hasn't been decided yet. I maybe could answer that question a little bit better in another 6 months.
What museums have contacted you today?
Well, I really don't feel I can answer that because I haven't dealt directly with anyone on it. But we're certainly interested in it, and as we put our product together, I could answer that better in the future.
Is it you yourself that will be making that decision?
Well, ultimately, it'll come to me for a decision.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, there's got to be a museum thing to the whole business, hasn't it?
Well, that's a part of the overall mix, but right now we don't know.
Go ahead,
how much.
please.
Yes, sir. I was wondering during this latest march of former Big Blue Machine members back east that are taking positions in LRT, etc. out here, most of their expertise seems to be in election arrangements and electioneering, and somewhere down the line they're pointed to the LRT because it's a good place for them to hide. Now, we're being riddled with these out here, and the people are getting a little skeptical. I was wondering what your affiliation with the Davis government in Ontario has been, and are you just on loan to heal the little wounds we're having out here, and then you'll just disappear later? Or is this going to be something other than a big get Bill reelected campaign? Because it's obviously a political thing.
Answer that one.
Listen, I don't know if I can answer that. All I can tell you is that we didn't have anything really to do with the government in Ontario, and my only job is to produce the best possible World's Fair.
In other words, you were not a member of Bill Davies' Big Blue Machine, not a member of the Tory party in
No,
Ontario.
no.
I think that's the answer he wanted, and I can't think of any Blue Machine people that have come onto your staff, at least none that I know of. Go ahead, please.
Yes, is there any developments going to be using the waters of Falls Creek on the east end of the creek?
Yes, there will be some development on the east end, and we're working with the city right now to make that as attractive as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next one. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning.
Yes, I was going to, the man before answered my question about where Mr. Bartlett had been. I'd just like to congratulate him on the job that he's taken. I was a bit disappointed to hear it was an American coming in to do our exhibition, especially after I saw the Shiloh and poor Mr. Bennett.
Oh, now that's not fair.
Sure, the other night.
I doubt if Mr. Bartlett knows what you're talking about. Mr. Bartlett is, of course, a
Very
landed
happy
immigrant.
that we're having a classy gentleman.
Thank you. You're the classy gentleman.
My goodness.
Because she couldn't be talking about me. Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Oh, another question regarding job creation. Who's going to man all these foreign pavilions like Peru, Indonesia, Australia? Will we have imports or trained British Columbians?
Well, in most cases, they're British Columbians, but of course, the countries have the right to bring a few people in. But I would say the majority will be local folks.
That's right. The embassies and the countries will bring in their experts to run their pavilion, and then they'll hire local
That's right.
people. Yeah, that's always what happens. Hey, hold on, please. From Assayas, go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
I have a question, if possible, for Mr. Bartlett. As time goes on and it becomes closer to 1986, will there be some form of public brochure or a newspaper notice, whatever is the most useful, where local craftspersons will be told if they can apply to have their wares appear in a British Columbia-type pavilion, for instance? And also, if that's possible, would local craftspersons be informed of what amount they would pay in percentage of sales, etc., to Expo 86, if that's the way they would go?
I'm not real sure of our plans yet, but I can tell you that all the crafts will be represented and that we have a keen interest in the craftsmen putting their wares on display and demonstrating their skills. So there will be an appropriate location for that.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Quite an incredible interest, isn't it? Where am I going next, please? Go ahead, please.
Mr. Bartlett.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, on the question that the young lady just asked before me, who would you contact if you had a theme to market for the Expo 86?
I would contact my office at Expo 86.
What's your address in Vancouver?
It's 1111 West Georgia Street, or you can call 689-1986.
1986. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yes.
I'm just wondering if you can help me.
Sure.
I heard that Grouse Mountain was thinking about building a hotel and convention center on the mountain. I'm wondering if you'd heard about that.
Yes, I heard about it, and I heard I saw an editorial over the weekend that perhaps they should apply to Tony Brummett for a bailout just like Whistler got.
Right.
I heard about that, but I know nothing about it, and that's purely a private business as far as I'm concerned. Go ahead, please. Where are you?
Well, Mr. Bartlett,
Yes.
do you look after wheelchairs? Montreal Expo did not construct on the use of wheelchairs.
Well, I think you'll find that all of our facilities for the handicapped, we're going to take quite a lot of pain to make sure that it's properly completed.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. More with Michael Bartlett, to my surprise, after the break. Michael Bartlett, the general manager pro tem of the general manager of Expo 86. Go ahead, please. That's you. Where are you?
Right here, Mr. Webster.
Speak up, then.
Yes, sir. Mr. Webster?
Yeah.
My first remark is to you. You couldn't trip this man up this morning. I say to you, Mr. Webster, you're one of the smartest hosts I've ever seen on a show.
Hear, hear.
If anybody could have tripped this man up, you could have. You couldn't, so do you, Mr. Bartlett. I say welcome to Canada. Good luck with Expo 86, and may God be with you.
Thank you.
Isn't that dreadful?
I enjoyed it.
Go ahead from Chili Whack.
Good morning, Mr. Webster.
Morning.
Yes, I would like to tell you that I've been corresponding with George Madden, who's Manager of Public Affairs for Expo.
Yes.
And the most important thing, as far as I'm concerned, for handicaps that doesn't get considered are doors. Doors to washrooms and that are too heavy. Everybody puts up ramps, but they don't consider what happens when you get inside places. You want to go to the washroom. They even set the toilets up inside, but you can't get in, you can't get out on your own. And I hope that they'll do something about that.
Well, I'd like to think that we'll do a good job there, so our plans are proceeding well.
Thank you. Go ahead from Castlegar.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning.
I just got a few questions for Mr. Bartlett, and I'd like to know, through the high unemployment, how can they really spend $126 million on this Expo 86, and there's millions of people out of work, and the money that's being wasted on a show that probably people can't really afford to even go to see. They're investing this money, and there's I don't know. Couldn't it be the money couldn't be used to something more worthwhile?
Michael, it's your first negative call this morning.
Oh, I'm sorry that it's
No, that's
negative,
all right. That's okay. I don't care how negative you are.
Okay, but seeing people out of work, and then we've got couldn't the money be used for something like?
He just said that. He just
all
said
over the country instead of just in one.
Oh, I see.
Country.
I think what you have to understand is that our revenues from the fair in 1986 will pay for the expenses of building the fair, so that all the jobs that we create are really created out of that revenue. So in effect, those jobs are created without an expenditure by the government. Not a bad way of doing business.
Well, the point he's actually making, Michael, if I may be so bold, is it's the old and the understandable syndrome from people in the interior who say 1,500 to 2,000 jobs for downtown Vancouver, but not a damn job for Castlegar, where he lives.
I think you've got to realize that a lot of the secondary industry is going to have to provide materials, prefabricated assembly and so forth to the site. So it's going to affect the entire province.
Good, thank you. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
That's you.
Right. What areas exactly will be used for 1986 Expo?
You mean the land portion?
That's right.
We stretch on False Creek on the west side from the east side of Granville Bridge over to Columbia on the east.
I see.
And then we really are a very narrow site, with our border really being just about where the stadium is located.
Right. Thank you very much. Good luck to you.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Burnett. First of all, welcome to BC.
Bartlett.
I'm sorry, is that me?
Bartlett, yes, that's you.
Bartlett. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I find it refreshing, a man in your position that makes a statement like, I don't know yet. And I wish you all the best with Expo 86, and it looks like you're the man for the job.
Thank you.
But you've got no relatives up here, have you?
None that I know of.
And you haven't even got a broad Yankee accent. I was expecting to hear a you here bit.
I'm working hard on that.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning.
Morning.
When Expo 86 opens, if any of BC's unemployed wish to apply for work at the fair, when and where do we apply, and what is expected of us? And my other question is, how much money does Expo 86 plan on making or generating during the fair?
To answer the first question about employment, obviously the construction portion of it will be through, you would apply to the construction companies that will be working on site. As for the employment to run the fair, we would have an employment office at that point, and you would apply there.
Where?
Well, we haven't an employment office right now other than at 1111 Georgia. But the employment for the fair operation itself really wouldn't take place for another few years.
In other words, it's too early, but you will have an employment office on the site prior to opening.
Yes, we will.
In other words, it won't necessarily be the people with the pavilions who'll do all the hiring.
No, for the most part, we will try to hire all the people and provide them to the other people that participate on site.
Good. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Bartlett, first I'd like to welcome you to Canada. I think you're a fine choice as manager of the Expo 86. Secondly, I'd like to make sure that, and ask you, I hope you set aside days that seniors are allowed to maybe travel on the ALRT with free admission, because too many of these events these days seniors can't afford and manage to get down to. Will there be Seniors Day?
There will certainly be Seniors Days at the Exposition. Now, I can't speak for the policy of the LRT.
No. Okay, boy, go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes?
I was going to refer this question to Mr. Bartlett. Who is in charge of finances?
At this time, we're looking for someone to be in charge of finance.
Oh, well, you know, like I heard in Expo in Montreal, they had trucks coming in with cement, and they checked them in 3 times. They just went out the back door and came in the front door again. And I'm wondering whether you're going to be able to retire when you're 50, you know? Yeah.
I think you'll find that this will be a very...
But we don't know who's in charge of finances, eh?
No.
Not yet.
Well, that's a real important question.
It sure is.
We'll find a person that will make sure those trucks only come through once.
Yeah, you don't want to have Dracula in charge of the blood bank.
No. Much obliged. Very good indeed, and it's so true, of course. It was proven at the inquiry into the Montreal Exposition that trucks came through and were booked in 3 times and only unloaded once. But that was not in British Columbia, where everybody's pristine and virginal and perfect. Go ahead, please.
Yes, first of all, Mr. Bartlett, I'm pleased to see that you decided to become a Canadian citizen rather than remain a landed immigrant forever, like a lot of Americans seem to do. And my second question, or my question is, will this affect the any of the property across Main Street, like the Canadian National or the Burlington Northern Railway yards?
I don't believe so. Obviously, we have there's a tremendous advantage in having those yards there and the possibility of train traffic coming in for Expo. But at this point, I'm not real sure.
Oh, I was just wondering for parking and things like that.
I'm not sure at this point.
And there's no point in asking about parking yet either, because that's a problem with BC Place and the stadium prior to Expo.
That's correct, and we'll see how that goes, and then of course we have to plan ourselves for it.
Go ahead, please.
Well, Mr. Webster?
Yes, sir.
I want to pick up 2 minor errors, and then I'd like to go on to my question.
Thank you.
That Mr. Drapeau, referring to not having a baby, had to do with the Olympics, not with Expo 67, and also the concrete trucks mentioned by one of your listeners, also related to the Olympics at Montreal.
How could I be so confused? I thank you for the correction.
That's quite all right. Expo 67, on the other hand, opened to world critical acclaim. It was a serious and still entertaining fiesta. Now, I'm concerned about the credibility of this great exhibition, and I think that a lot of people are, perhaps because of the appointment of someone who has an amusement park background. I'm concerned that so far we don't seem to have heard from West Germany, the Scandinavian countries, the Soviet Union, and so forth, and I'm wondering whether references to arts and crafts and so forth. The suggestion is that transportation itself is not a great enough and entertaining theme. I disagree with that, and I would like to hear what Mr. Bartlett has to say about this general criticism of combining entertainment with some serious purpose of education. And I don't want to sound too stuffy about it, because I don't think it's a stuffy question.
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong at all with combining entertainment and a serious subject. Furthermore, I think transportation is and related communications is a very broad subject and one that lends itself to being entertaining. So I think the combination of the two is quite a happy marriage.
Well, Expo 67 didn't bring in Broadway shows, that's my point. And it did bring in some serious nations. Have you had any more response from some of these heavyweights that I'm talking about?
I think that, we have 14 nations already. If you compare that to New Orleans, which opens in '84, they've got 5 nations. They don't have one major nation. And I think you're going to find that when it's all said and done, we'll have 30 nations, and you'll be able to count Russia and other countries like that in the mix. So we will have those major nations, and I don't think entertainment or my background will affect the ability to attract them at all.
No, but your attitude will, and that's what I was after. The fact that
we really must attract the bright brains of other countries here, and the seriousness of purpose will be, I think, measured when they decide whether or not to take part.
Well, I think seriousness of purpose, yes, they will. That will influence their decision. But just because I have an amusement park background doesn't mean that I'm not a serious person, or that I can't convince countries that we're very serious about what our endeavor is.
Okay, well, thanks very much. You don't seem to know about Expo 67, but it was a critically acclaimed thing, perhaps the best in the modern world. Incidentally, that received the acclaim in your own country, New Yorker magazine, and everything else. All over the world, it was considered to be the finest exhibition held in modern times. I hope and trust you'll try to do the best you can.
We will certainly live up to that standard.
Thank you, and we'll finish on that excellent call from a well-informed viewer. My thanks, Michael Bartlett. We'll be on your back from time to time, and we'll give you every opportunity to spread the gospel of
You're
Expo
welcome.
86.
We'll look forward to it.
Next, a man with a problem, his restaurant cut in two. After the break. One year ago today, the King Neptune served its last meals, and we covered it that morning when Mr. Almas and his crew were sawing the padlocks off the door of his restaurant when he was fighting with those who want to develop the waterfront in New Westminster. And Steve Wyatt has prepared a little piece of historical perspective.
The King Neptune Seafood Restaurant has been on the New Westminster waterfront for 32 years. Now it may be forced to close. The problem is New Westminster wants to rebuild its decaying downtown area.
Close us down for a storage site. It doesn't make sense. The city needs us.
This morning it took in regular deliveries despite its landlord's legal ultimatum to close at midnight the day before. This model shows what the First Capital Corporation intends to replace it with, a pedestrian walkway, here seen from the water. It's a series of steps opening up the waterfront. The entire $250 million project involves pedestrian access all along the Fraser River, and the Crown Corporation claims the restaurant must go.
They can't stay where they are if the redevelopment program on the waterfront is going to be carried out. The plan that we're following at the present time is to go into court and ask for a court order for possession.
In the dead of night, his watchman had alerted Denis Almas, so he rushed to his waterfront restaurant armed with a hacksaw to undo what agents of the BC Development Corporation had done. And only by parking his car had he stopped workmen from ditching his restaurant off from the public.
This is just beyond me. We'll be in court tomorrow.
Court tomorrow was actually this morning, and the ditch had been filled in by the time the hearing was over. A shovel hired by the First Capital City Development Corporation touched it up, and the BCDC subsidiary agreed not to reopen it, at least till Tuesday.
Tonight at midnight, the doors shut for good. Many longtime customers came to pay their last respects.
To make way for a multi-million-dollar development, the King Neptune has been unceremoniously chopped in half, so it can be moved in manageable pieces to another as yet undetermined site. Almas says the King Neptune could end up in one of several communities, including Richmond, Delta, or Coquitlam. Until he finalizes a deal, the restaurant will sit under a tarp in storage, awaiting a new home.
The King Neptune is still sitting on the shores of the Fraser River, but in South Vancouver, and still cut in half.
You wonder why a confrontation like that would take place. You go through the whole situation every day. You wonder what you could have done differently, and I played it by the books. I couldn't have done anything differently than I've done.
As for the New Westminster waterfront, not much has changed here either. In fact, barely a stone has been turned for the development that forced the King Neptune out.
Well, in the studio with me now is Denis Almas himself. What that seems to tell me, Denis, is that you could still have been operating there for an additional year. Is that right?
Quite easily. There would have been no problem.
And where is the cut-in-half King Neptune now?
Well, it's in South Vancouver. It's waiting in a storage site. It's going to hopefully go to Richmond. We have a very good site, and it's going to be very good there.
That ain't a new building, you know. That's what, 32 years old?
Well, the building's older than that. We renovated it 15 years ago, but I know all the all the little ghosts.
It used to be an old feed barn or something,
That's
wasn't
right.
it?
It used to be a Buckerfield's.
I remember that when it was down there on the waterfront in New Westminster.
Mm-hmm.
And have you got a new site for the King Neptune?
Well, we're working on one. The one site that didn't work out had its problems in that you couldn't bring the boats. People couldn't come up in boats, and I had a lot of comments from people about wanting to come up in boats, and this new site will fill the bill. The long-term plan for it is exactly what we would like.
When will you move it?
As soon as I can. We could be open within 2 months.
Have you made the deal for the new site in Richmond somewhere?
No, we have to. You have to go by the red tape, or however you want to put it, and handle it properly. So it's taken longer than I had have wanted, of course.
Is this another waterfront lease you're going for?
Yes, it'll be a long-term lease.
A long-term lease?
Yeah, I won't get into the same situation.
No, this time you'll make sure that you're not going to be moved. Now, can you put it back together again? Can you lift it off the ground where it is now and barge it back and put it together and pass all the inspections?
There's no problem there. For the first 3 months, of course, we were getting all our plans together and permits and making sure that everything would work, and yes, it will.
Now, you did take court action, and you lost all the court actions, didn't you?
Well, that's going to be going on for quite a while longer. I mean, I'm not going to, no matter what happens to us when we get the restaurant relocated or anything else that I do, I'm not going to let that situation just go by. It's a horrible situation, and the fact that we could be operating in New Westminster today.
You could have been for that solid year.
Yeah, well, we still, however long it's going to be until they start building down there, which is what we told them
in the first
ago.
place.
Yeah.
You said they would never get ahead. Mind you, you must give them some, I suppose, sympathy. I could give them some sympathy in that the climate for industrial expansion by BCDC has gone down the hill considerably since a year ago.
Well, I think a year ago it was pretty much in the same position. I mean, these people should, in my opinion, should never have been allowed to put out these huge pieces of property, these large developers with so little down that they can get out so easily as they can.
You're suggesting that the development which we saw, the lavish development, is really in not a very active state in Westminster at the moment?
Well, it's very conceptual.
That means nothing has happened.
Nothing has happened. Well, they built the McKinnis Street overpass, and they have realigned the railway tracks. I'll give them that. Well, these are things we could have lived with at that time. We told them, we've seen the railways move before in front of us, and we said, well, we can drive around and come in the side entrance. We don't care if you block off our front. And all we asked for was to be allowed to stay there and operate until we could build in the new development. So who won?
They won and you lost.
Well, I think everybody lost. I mean, they certainly, for potential developers coming in, they must look at the situation we went through and wonder what they're dealing with.
In other words, you're saying that this is a classic example of ill-considered selfish action by a Crown corporation which has denied you 1 year's good business.
Well, it's denied us more than that. When they originally came in, of course, we believed and still believe that they were going to live up to the obligation that they stated that they would do.
And you still maintain the
We were going to be part of that development.
Oh yes, you were going to be in it.
Oh, of course. They even had people coming over, interior designers, to show me what the interior of the building was going to be like and everything else under the sun. Of course, the real problem was that they wouldn't allow us to. They don't know when it's going to go ahead. They today don't really know where a restaurant could be down at the foot of 8th Street, where we were going to, where we would like to be. And they did offer us other opportunities on the waterfront, but none of them would have fit the bill. One was way up at the other end of the dock that they wanted a large amount of money for, and they couldn't guarantee the access to it. The dock was in very bad shape, and it just didn't work. And other restaurants are going to be coming down at the foot of 8th Street. And the one criticism I did get at that time was that there are restaurants such as the Cannery that don't have the foot of 8th Street location that we had, but nobody's asking them to move. Mm-hmm. They set up there. That's where they decided to go.
Where are they now?
The Cannery is down in Vancouver.
Oh, you mean the Cannery on the waterfront?
Well, they brought that up
as in Vancouver.
Yeah,
yes.
They brought that up as an example.
That's got nothing to do with it.
No, no, no.
I mean, the Neptune was particularly special because it was on the old waterfront, wasn't it? Mind you, you had a good cheap lease there for a number of years.
Well, it was a negotiated lease.
Well, it was only what, about 12 or 13,000 a year?
No, I think it was 15.
15,000.
But you know, we would have been prepared to negotiate that lease with them. We told them that a number of times.
So all you can do this morning is now second guess them, look into the camera and say, you didn't have to throw me out.
Well, I think it's unfortunate that in any interview that I have ever done that nobody will come on with me. It would make it much easier that I could hear their excuses because they don't have any reasons.
You're talking about BCDC?
Yeah.
Didn't we ask them to appeal this morning? Mind you, are you still suing them?
Yeah.
Well, it's difficult if you're suing somebody to have them on and make statements that might affect the lawsuit. I mean,
well, you never know what they're going to say. I mean, they're going to trip themselves up sooner or later.
Okay, more with Denis Almas. Have you any sympathy for Denis, or do you think he should have been wiped out, cut in half, and thrown away for the past year? Let's tell Denis what you think of him after the break. This is how it'll look once the two bits are stuck together again. And, oh look, see, that's the front door. Now I'm going to turn this around without stopping it. And that's the glassed-in piece on the waterfront in your new site in Richmond. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Can I throw this away? No. I'll hand it over. Okay. How much is that going to cost you to reset up in Richmond?
Oh, over $1 million, close to $1 million, somewhere in there. Things have changed in the last year. You know.
That's the money you could have spent in New Westminster, is it not?
Sure, we would have spent it in New Westminster.
Now, what are you suing them for?
I don't know what the real problem was there, you know, because my opinion is they didn't like the building. I think that's the whole crux of the problem. They want to put these Westminster steps in, which are an impossible situation. I mean, you look at them, you would think that they would be fine in Southern California or in some warm climate, but no one is going to walk up and down 30 steps. So they're going to put stores right where we were. They're going to block off that level access and put up and down steps and stores on either side. Now,
30 steps?
Yeah. In today's weather, I can't see it.
Now, how much does it cost you in legal fees up to now?
Probably around $30,000 somewhere in there.
Yeah. Is this your only business?
Yeah.
Your only active business?
Yeah. There was a rumor going around that we had the 7 Seas in North Vancouver, but that's my cousin.
That's the same name?
Same name.
Yeah, but different operation altogether.
Different operation. Oh, there's been tons of rumors going around about the settlement that we were supposedly to have had, but there was no such thing.
Did they offer you a settlement of any kind?
No.
Not a nickel?
No.
Just get off?
That's it. Yeah.
Padlock you?
That's it. And you remember what a rush they were in, too.
Middle of the night?
Middle of the night, 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, they're cutting holes across to stop us from operating.
It was pretty chintzy, I must say.
And now the year's gone by and nothing's happened down there. Makes you wonder what they were doing at 4 o'clock.
Didn't the courts make them fill it in again?
Well, there was for a period, but we had to, legally, you look back on it and you wonder if you should have, of course, you always want to do things the proper way. And Almases have never done anything any differently. But you wonder whether I question whether I should have stayed open at that time. I don't know what success I would have had. I probably would have had people against me if I had have done that. But
yeah, I suppose so, because, mind you, your clientele came from all over the Lower Mainland.
People were saying if the trench was there, they'd cross it.
You're pretty bitter about the whole thing, Denis.
I'm frustrated. To me, it's just a big deception.
And you're suing them for damages of some kind?
Yeah. Well, you have to. I mean, what are you going to do? I'm sure they would have preferred it if I had just lied down and died and just gone away and not caused any trouble.
True enough. Let's see what the calls say. You never know.
No, you never know.
Go ahead to Denis Almas.
Good morning, sirs.
Morning.
Morning.
I was just going to say there's a place in Vancouver there, which is right down on the waterfront, and for probably $1 you could rent this rather large pier. And it's built out on the water, and you could probably even put an airstrip in and tie your boats up there at the same time. I think it's down at the foot of Broad Street, isn't it?
Yes, we do believe we know what you're referring to.
Pardon me?
I do believe I know the site to which you are referring.
Have you checked into that yet?
Well, yeah, there's another occupant. That's the problem, and it's called the National Harbours Board.
Oh, I see. I didn't think they were using it for anything.
Oh, you didn't know about that? No. Well, they're going to spend $140 million and put up a cruise ship facility there. They claim. We haven't seen it yet.
Well, that's what I was wondering. I've seen it sitting there for quite a long time, and I was wondering for $1 you could probably go down and put your restaurant up there.
Well, I don't think it's any secret that before the federal government came in, that Pier BC, that we had an agreement with them for the restaurant on the pier. You didn't know that, Jack?
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Agreement with whom?
With the provincial government.
With the provincial government?
Provincial people, yeah. And of course, we're talking to the federal people now about the development, and hopefully we'll be able to come to some agreement. But of course, you have to follow all the proper channels.
But that would be a separate endeavor altogether.
There's no way that this is ever going to interfere with the situation in New Westminster.
That you're going to revitalize
Listen,
in Richmond?
We worked, no, not even that, but we worked for 33 years down in New Westminster to build up our reputation, and there's just no way that I'm going to let it go that easily.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Mr. Webster.
Morning, sir.
Yes, I'd just like to say to Mr. Almas, I really feel sympathetic for him about the New Westminster site, because I think it was just a case of the provincial government, somebody flexing their muscle, and, you know, taking a small business out, which was a good business. And I would like to wish Mr. Almas the best of luck with the site in Richmond.
Well, I suppose that they had to show that they had the power, but, you know, a corporation with this amount of power should show some compassion, too, in a situation.
Well, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. The site is still sitting there. You could have operated for the past year.
Well, that's where they lose their credibility.
There's no argument about that whatsoever, is there?
Well, I'm not sure from them.
From your
point of view. They won't come to meet with us.
Well, I think, you know, Richmond is getting a very good restaurant. I just wish the best of luck to you and your new...
You can't tell me the location yet. You don't want to tell me it
no,
yet.
No, I would prefer not to.
Goodbye. Go ahead, please.
Morning, Jack.
Morning.
Good morning, Dennis.
Good morning.
I told you once before when I was in there the last night of your opening with my wife and my dad, and we had asked you over to our table, and we said, why don't you go to the people and have it there, the people to protect you, instead of having to go through the court the way you were going. And you said, no, you were going to go through the court system. Remember that?
Well, I think it's the fact that you're forced into a situation like that. You don't really have any choice. When they're coming at you with papers, you just have to go that route. You don't have any choice in the matter.
You got to go to the courts.
Yes, I know, but at the time that he was being pushed around is what I'm saying. If he'd have gone to the people, they could have got some buy in some time. He might still be open today till they got it ready to go.
Well,
I'm saying.
We of course tried. We tried everything under the sun to do things without going in front of the public. And they just wouldn't talk to us.
BCDC or their agents must have said at that time, we need this property now.
Yeah.
And they finally got such an order, did they not?
Yes, they did.
So not much you can do about that. Go ahead, please.
Oh, Mr. Webster.
Yes, sir.
Ever since Mr. Almas got into his trouble about his restaurant, I've been wondering about the old Brownsville sawmill site across the river from where he was, just slightly upriver. I think that's an old day. They never owned that land. I think it was a CNR lease land. Has he thought about locating there?
What, on Barnston Island?
No, on the Brownsville sawmill site, just below the Patella Bridge.
Well, we've looked at...
They tore that old mill down, you know.
Yeah, it burned down, didn't it?
No, it went broke, and then they put it up for auction, and the thing, you know, just disappeared.
Well, we've looked at hundreds of sites.
Well, you know, you're certainly an old Westminster type, and locating across the river from New Westminster seems to be an ideal place for you to be.
Well, he seems to have...
He has the clientele.
Possibility...
It's not a problem. There's an ideal site there for a small marina. But I would think you'd be able to lease that from the CNR, because it's not big enough for any really big industrial site.
Okay, boy, you look to that.
Well, you've got 300 and some odd seats, 330 seats, and you have to cut down your chances of failure as much as possible. So you have to get a high visibility site, such as the foot of 8th Street in New Westminster.
Okay, I'll do another segment of calls with Denis Almas. After the... Very good. How many people did you employ in the King Neptune, Denis Almas?
About 70, 75. It changed, of course, you know, in the restaurant business it has its good season and bad season.
All your old people will be gone now, not...
Well, a lot of them are going to be coming back when we get open.
Oh, good.
I'm in close contact with them.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning. When do you plan on reopening, and where do you plan on reopening? Nothing has been done yet to your site. How do you feel about the city doing what they did to you, and the city hasn't done anything to the property yet?
Okay, we've got your
question.
question.
How do you feel about that?
Oh, it's disgusting. You know, that's...
You're disgusted.
Well, sure. You can't be anything but. You're frustrated, disgusted, and you complete despair. You go through it every day.
Go ahead from Victoria.
Yes.
I'd like to just wish this man a heck of a lot of luck in trying to beat the government down, but the system, the way that the systems work in this government, like with the Duke Point is another big one that's going on, but it just doesn't seem to go anywhere. This one here in New Westminster seems to be the same situation. It's all on the books, and then all of a sudden, boom, it drops. And I'd like to know why or how this BCBC or BCDC system keeps getting in on these things, and then all of a sudden everything seems to drop, and it doesn't go anywhere. And it's just the whole system of the government and their big money that goes into this. And I wish this man one heck of a lot of luck with the government, and hopefully he'll beat them down, and more power to him if he can do it. And that's about all I've got to say. Thanks, Jack.
Okay, now this is BCDC.
Yeah, British Columbia Development Corporation.
They're the people who supply the land and the facilities for jobs.
They're the trouble solvers.
They're the trouble solvers.
Yeah, and if they had tried to solve my trouble,
you'd have been a lot happier
well,
today.
I would have been in business, sure.
Yeah, I'd say you've got them on that point.
You see, they have a monopoly in New Westminster and in this Crown Corporation system, and nobody can stop them. And once they get their mind set up to do a certain thing, it just makes it extremely difficult to bring any common sense to it. They won't listen.
The reason it's slowed down, of course, is because of the economy and the difficulty.
Well, the economy is rough for me too. You know, here I'm out there trying to find another location, and I have the same troubles they do.
Yeah, you don't have their money either.
No, I don't.
No.
Well, you see, there's another point. You can fight them for only so long. They have an empty stomach or pocket.
Yeah, it's a never-ending source of
income,
bank guarantees.
Right.
The provincial government, which is we the people. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Mr. Almas.
Mm-hmm.
Just to let you know that the developers knew a week ahead of time before your eviction that that job was not going to go through. They had sent letters out to all the engineering firms on the project to hold up all their work.
Well, I'm sure when this investigation comes through, and I really believe, you know, the ombudsman's in on this situation. They're investigating it, or they're trying to get the legislation to be allowed to investigate a Crown Corporation, which is going to be new for the country. Apparently, that's never happened before.
Yeah, like my wife
I'd imagine
works
there's
at
going to
one
be a
of
whole
these places,
bunch of
and they
things coming
notified
up.
her ahead of time.
He's saying that they knew ahead of time that thing was going to slow up considerably, and that they didn't have to.
Well, we knew that it wasn't going to go as had. I'm sure that the development in New Westminster will happen in time. I wish it well in some aspects. I would like to see, personally, I'd like to see a lot of things different about it. We spent 33 years down there, and when we started not criticizing but putting our feelings forward as to what we thought would be better or good about the development, then they started getting angry with us because you don't know what you're doing.
No, you're not allowed to talk to civil servants like that. Go ahead, please. Hello.
We're Richmondites, and I would be very pleased if Mr. Almas locates out here. But what I wanted to tell him, when he reopened after remodeling last time, they gave each lady a miniature rose. And I rooted this, and now I have a little red rose.
Well, that's very good.
That's
Thank
the
you.
Almas Rose. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning, Jack.
Morning.
I would just like to say, okay, I'm from Richmond too, and I think it would be a good idea to locate your business in a city that wants your business. Apparently, if New Westminster doesn't want the business, then you should just move it to a city or a corporation that will be, sort of cooperative.
Okay.
Well, the New Westminster, the people wanted us to stay. I mean, I had a petition of 14,000 people that wanted us to stay in New Westminster, and still they didn't pay the slightest bit of attention to it. And I think that is a bad situation when so many people want something in a development and they don't pay the slightest bit of attention to it.
Response, yeah, but
Even the city council passed a resolution for us to be able to remain, and they didn't pay any attention to that either.
but those are the people that make things click is the municipality. I think you should locate to a place like Richmond where, the people and the municipality will be receptive to your business, and, it would be a good place to grow, I think.
Well, the response in Richmond from the City Hall has been excellent.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, I just want to say that I've been following your situation quite closely, and I just want to wish you all the luck in the world, and you've
Thank you.
come doing pretty good.
Thank you. From Abbotsford, go ahead, please.
Good morning.
Yes.
Good morning. Just curious of what happened to the employees that you had there. It just seems kind of hypocritical to first of all, the loss that you took, then the loss that they have to take as well. It's absurd.
Well, you know, they say they're going to be provided 1,400 jobs down on this new Westminster waterfront, and I say, why not 1,480?
And why wait a year to do it?
Well, yeah, sure. A lot of them have found other jobs. Some of them have not. Some of them are beyond going out and looking for jobs. They've been with us for 30 years, some of them, and it's just difficult for them to go out and find other jobs. And of course, I've been looking for other situations that I could put my employees in, even in the interim, but I haven't been able to find anything that really fits the bill.
When do you think you'll have this Richmond location tied up?
As soon as possible.
As soon as possible. Maybe a couple of months.
As soon as I get that property, 2 months I'll be open, within 2 months.
Missed that one. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
That's you, sir.
Yes, I'm just wondering, with all these moves and all these hefty financial situations here, is that going to result in a higher cost in his new menu there?
Is he going to put the prices of your meals up?
Well, we've always kept our prices down as much as possible, and I still fully intend to do that.
Yeah, obviously you've got to do your best. Go ahead, please.
Jack, I've got a couple of questions. First of all, I'd like to ask Mr. Almas, how does he expect other people to go into business? You know, the people who are sitting on the fence right now contemplating, and they hear a story like that. I mean, you know, what incentive is there for anybody to risk their money and their time?
What's he saying?
What incentive is there for people to risk their money
time
in a time like this when you appear to have been messed about considerably by a Crown corporation for a start?
Well, that's the bad thing about it. You know, it hasn't bred any
no initiative, no incentive.
No,
Make things difficult.
And I certainly didn't want it that way, Jack.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Denis Almas. The restaurant is still in 2 pieces, still in good shape. Within a couple of months, he hopes to get it located in Richmond, and he's still got an action against BCDC?
Yes, that's all proceeding, and it will be until the whole problem's solved.
Until the problems are solved. Sad story of the King Neptune, but it may rise like phoenix from the ashes, hopefully so, and I'll be back after the break. Well, we'll finish off this morning with a few fair questions and a couple of telephone calls. And the first fair question is this. What good are the advanced ticket vouchers for BC ferries when the workers at the Nanaimo terminal won't give me preferred loading? I, says this man, had to wait an extra ferry sailing after an employee told me the advanced tickets were a pipe dream of the politicians. That was on January the 2nd. Well, BC Ferries told me that that was a mistake, and you should have been loaded in the special lane for the advanced ticket purchasees. The corporation is going to apologize to you if that will make you feel any better. They are being recognized, the advanced ticket sales. You know what they are? You buy them in advance and you go into a preferred loading line, and if you get the ferry dock 20 minutes before the sailing, you're supposed to get priority loading. The next one is from Maple Ridge, and it's from Margaret Town, and it says, why can't I get my 50 mink skins back? I've been waiting for 1 year to get a coat made, but in the meantime the furrier has gone bankrupt, and now the bailiff has my minks. Can't you make him give them back? Well, Mrs. Town wasn't the only one skinned by the furrier, and the bailiff, Northern Credits Limited of Vancouver, tells me some 100 other consignees and creditors are also lined up for their furs. And Gordon Cunningham of the Bailiff Company tells me it was a nightmare sorting out the mess left behind by the furrier. Parts of coats mixed in with skins by the bushel. But all is now sorted out, and Mrs. Town will get a letter soon to come and identify her 50 mink skins, swear a statutory declaration before a notary public, and take her skins away and have them transformed into a coat. Dear Jack, it really burns me up when I see a satellite TV dish being installed at Colony Farm at public expense. Why do they get such deluxe treatment? Well, you're wrong. The Director of Nursing at the Forensic Psychiatric Institution assures me the satellite dish has been installed at the patient's expense. They make and sell lawn furniture and dolls' houses and goodness knows what not. They've saved the money and they use it to buy the dish. No public money. And they're very welcome to the dish. That's out at Colony Farm. Now, got to fill a couple of minutes. Why is nobody on the telephone? Pardon? Where are you speaking from?
Prince George.
Good morning, Prince George.
Good morning. I enjoy your show very much, Mr. Webster, and there's a couple of things I'd like to say, please.
Some days I enjoy it, some days I don't. However.
Well, anyway, I have eaten in the King Neptune, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. And I'm sorry to see it go. I hope he does relocate. But another thing is, does your wife use Tide or Bounce or Crest toothpaste?
I think we use all Colgate.
I'll tell you why I asked. I have just recently learned that on the boxes there is...
No, it's not true.
It isn't?
No, it is not true. Not true, not true, not true. Has no connection whatsoever with the Moonies.
Really?
Yeah, it's an old trademark.
It is.
So don't believe that rather vicious, stupid little rumor.
Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Hello.
Jack?
Yes.
Is that me?
Yes.
I'd like to know if the new Expo 86 is going to have anything to do with the P&E, or is it going to open up at the same time, and is it going to affect it? And is the P&E going to ask for a subsidiary?
Why were you so slow in asking the question? That was a good question, which I didn't ask. Obviously, the P&E Midway will be going, of course. Once old Erwin Swangard gets his teeth into anything, he never lets go. But I shouldn't imagine it would be a major problem, but it probably will hit the P&E revenues in the summer of '86.
Yeah, is it going to open up at the same time or before?
Well, this one opens in May till October, and the P&E opens, when is it open? Labor Day? Closes Labor Day and is open for about 3 weeks before then.
So I guess the P&E will be crying.
I guess they will be, but that's a very good question.
Okay,
how
thanks,
can
Jack.
Yes, thank you. Go ahead, please. 30 seconds.
Yes, good morning. Can you tell me if there's any more news on the German family?
Nothing but bad news. I'll tell you about it tomorrow. It looks like they're going to have to go back because they are patently deportable, and nobody in the government will give them a kind look or let them in by order in council or by ministerial permit, as are many scores of thousands of really illegal immigrants. And I'll be back after the break. One of my guests tomorrow morning will be Tom Waterland, the Minister of Forests, who's making very loud noises about the possibility of countervailing duties in the lumber industry. And I do believe Tony Brummett will be here tomorrow morning as well. Anyway, we'll still try and make it a bright programme, despite the fact that we'll have 2 social credit cabinet ministers. And that's a joke, by the way, I think. And tell Stan to stop giggling. 9 a.m. precisely. The boss of Expo 86 with Webster on check at midnight. Tom Waterland, Forest Minister on Webster at 9 a.m. precisely.